All right, so today we're diving into something pretty massive, actually two massive things,
Uh-huh.
EDM and hip hop,
Yeah.
and thinking about how they live online. I mean, these genres are so digital, so tied into the platforms we use every day.
For sure. They really thrive in the digital space, and they've actually been shaped by it too, right?
It's a two-way street for sure. And what we're going to try to do today is break down exactly how it all works.
Yeah, we'll cut through the noise.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening who wants to understand how EDM and hip-hop work in this digital age without getting lost in a million articles and data points, well,
This is the place to be.
exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it as a cheat sheet to the modern music world, specifically for these genres, which are so driven by online culture.
I like that, a cheat sheet. So we're pulling back the curtain, looking at how we consume these genres, how the artists behind the music are making it all happen.
Right. And we'll touch on everything from the platforms to the strategies that are working, like how artists are connecting with you guys, the fans, in this digital world.
Absolutely. So to kick things off, let's start with the most obvious, the most basic way most of us listen to music these days.
Okay.
Streaming.
Right. Streaming services. They are, no question, the dominant force in music. It's like the central nervous system for how we experience music now, especially for genres like EDM and hip hop.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. When you go to listen to something, chances are you're opening Spotify,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
right? Or maybe Apple Music. Those are the big two. And what's interesting is that they both have massive libraries, but they each kind of have their own vibe, their own way of doing things.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like Spotify, they've got this incredible system of playlists, some curated by their team, some by users, and then their algorithm
Oh,
is...
don't even get me started on that algorithm.
Right. It's like it knows what you want to hear before you even do sometimes.
Sometimes it's scary accurate. Like,
Yeah.
how did they know that was the perfect song for this moment? But then you have Apple Music. They do algorithms too, of course.
Yeah.
But they also put a big emphasis on human curation,
Yeah.
like their editorial playlists. And sometimes they get those big exclusive releases.
Oh, yeah, those can be huge. Like when an artist drops an album only on Apple Music, it creates a real buzz, right?
Huge buzz.
Yeah, it changes how people experience it, makes them seek it out, makes it an event.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, but then there's YouTube, which brings in that whole visual element. It's not just about listening anymore.
Right. It's a whole other layer of engagement. You've got music videos, which are still so important, especially for EDM and hip hop. Visually, those genres are so strong, they lend themselves to that format.
Oh, for sure.
But then you've also got full live sets on YouTube, lyric videos, so you can sing along.
Right.
And then there's all the user-generated content, people making their own videos, remixes, reaction videos. It creates this whole community around the music.
And speaking of communities, we can't forget about SoundCloud, which has always been this haven for independent artists.
SoundCloud is interesting. It's like this breeding ground for new sounds, especially for EDM. The remix culture on there is...
Wild.
Yeah, wild. And for hip-hop, too, a lot of artists got their start on SoundCloud, building a following before they even got signed. It's really accessible, which is great for new artists.
And then you have Tidal, which has that whole high-fidelity audio thing going on.
Yeah.
They appeal to the audiophiles, those who want the best possible sound quality. And they also do some exclusive releases.
Right, so you've got all these different options. Even beyond those big ones, you have Amazon Music, Deezer, AudioMac. Each one have its own audience, its own strengths. Like AudioMac, for example, they're really strong in some among music markets.
Totally. So the point is, when we talk about streaming, we're talking about a whole ecosystem. It's how most of us listen to music these days. Hit play online, check out those algorithmic recommendations, maybe subscribe to a premium service to get rid of the ads and listen offline.
Right, and don't forget about playlists. I mean, playlists are everything these days. They're like the new mixtapes. Whether it's a carefully curated playlist from Spotify or Apple Music or one your friend made, they're shaping how we listen and discover new music.
I'm curious, for you personally, when you come across a new EDM or hip-hop track that you love, where does that discovery usually happen? Are you actively searching, or do you find it through a playlist or an algorithm?
That's a good question. I think for me, honestly, it's usually a playlist. Like I'll be listening to one of my go-to playlists and then boom, there it is, a song I've never heard before, and it just blows me away.
Yeah, those unexpected discoveries are the best.
Yeah.
Okay, but moving beyond streaming, we have to talk about social media, especially these short-form video platforms that are so huge right now. They become this massive force in how EDM and hip-hop spread and go viral.
Absolutely. Like TikTok, you can't deny its influence. You get a catchy snippet of a song, pair it with a dance challenge or a funny meme, and it can explode overnight.
It's crazy how fast things can spread on TikTok. And then you have Instagram Reels, which is basically the same concept.
Yeah.
Short, engaging videos set to music. It's another way for songs to take off.
And even though they're not exclusively for music, Snapchat and Facebook stories also play a role. People are always sharing music on there, little snippets of what they're listening to.
Yeah, they contribute to that sense of, like, what's hot right now, what's trending.
Right. It's all about capturing those little moments, those vibes. And what's interesting is how these platforms have kind of democratized music promotion. Like, artists don't always need a big label or a ton of money to get their music out there. If they make a video that connects, it can go viral on its own.
Totally. And for genres like EDM and hip-hop, where the visual element is so strong, it's a perfect fit. Like a crazy EDM drop or an intense hip-hop verse, seeing it on video just takes it to another level.
Right. It amplifies the impact. And then you have platforms like Twitter and Reddit, which are more about discussion and community. People go there to dissect new releases, share memes, debate their favorite artists.
Oh yeah, it's like the digital equivalent of hanging out at the record store, arguing about which album is better.
Exactly. Like, I know I've spent way too much time on Reddit reading threads about the hidden meanings in hip-hop lyrics.
Oh, me too. The rabbit holes you can go down on those platforms.
Deep rabbit holes.
Okay, so we've talked about streaming, social media. Now let's circle back to YouTube, but this time focus on that visual aspect, the fact that it's become this massive library of music videos, live performances, behind-the-scenes content.
Yeah, YouTube is more than just a place to listen. It's like a visual archive for these genres. Like, music videos are still such a powerful way for artists to tell stories, to build their image, their brand.
And for EDM and hip-hop, which are so visual, it's essential.
Oh, yeah, essential. And then you have those full recordings of live sets, festival performances. So even if you can't be there in person, you can still experience it.
And feel that energy, right?
Yeah, feel that energy. And then there's all the behind-the-scenes stuff. Artists taking you into the studio, showing you how they make their music, giving you a glimpse into their lives. It helps build that connection with fans.
It's all about intimacy, that feeling that you're getting to know the artist on a personal level.
Right, exactly. And YouTube, they've also jumped on the short-form video bandwagon with YouTube Shorts. So now artists are sharing those little snippets, those attention-grabbing moments there too.
It's like everyone's competing for our attention, trying to create those bite-sized pieces of content that will hook you.
Oh, yeah, it's a whole different landscape now. But it's exciting too, right? There's so much creativity happening.
For sure. Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about something that's a bit more traditional, but still so crucial for these genres.
Okay.
Live performances and festivals, like, they're the heart and soul of EDM and hip-hop, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Like, for EDM, the festival scene is everything. You've got these massive events like Tomorrowland, Ultra, EDC. It's not just about the music, it's a whole experience.
It's like a community, a tribe, people coming together to share this love for the music, the energy.
Exactly. And the scale of these events is just mind-blowing. The stages, the lights, the production, it's like nothing else.
And then for hip-hop, while it's definitely present at festivals, it's more about those individual live shows, the concert tours, that high-energy, in-your-face performance style.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how those live shows are increasingly being live streamed, so you can actually watch them online, even if you're not there in person.
It's a way to bridge the gap, to bring that live energy to a wider audience. But there's still something special about being there in the flesh, right? Like being part of that crowd, that shared experience.
No question. It's like a collective energy, a shared passion. It's hard to replicate that online.
Okay, so before we get too far down the digital path, we have to acknowledge that some people still like to actually own their music. Like, digital downloads haven't completely disappeared, and vinyl is making a comeback.
Oh yeah, for sure. Streaming is king, but there's still a market for downloads, especially on platforms like iTunes and Bandcamp.
And Bandcamp in particular is great because it allows fans to directly support independent artists.
Right, it cuts out the middleman. And then you have the vinyl resurgence. It's niche, but it's passionate. People who love the sound quality, the artwork, the whole ritual of putting on a record.
Yeah, it's a different experience. It's more tangible, more deliberate. And you see a lot of cool vinyl releases in EDM and hip-hop these days.
Absolutely. Limited editions, special pressings, colored vinyl. It's become a collector's item.
Okay, so we've talked about how we as listeners are consuming EDM and hip-hop. But now let's flip the script and look at it from the artist's perspective. How are they navigating this digital landscape? How are they getting their music heard, building a following, making a living?
Yeah, it's a whole different game on the other side of the headphones. Like, Just making great music isn't enough anymore. You have to be savvy, you have to understand how this digital world works.
So first things first, they have to get their music onto those streaming platforms we were talking about. Spotify, Apple Music, all of them. That's where music distribution services come in, right?
Exactly. You've got services like DistroKid, TuneCore, United Masters. They make it pretty easy for artists to get their tracks up on all the major platforms without needing a record label.
So that's step one. But then what? I mean, there are millions of songs out there. How do you stand out?
Well, playlists are key. Getting your music on those big curated playlists can be a game changer, like Spotify's editorial playlists or even popular user-generated playlists.
Yeah, if your song ends up on the right playlist, it can expose you to a huge new audience.
Absolutely. And on SoundCloud, getting reposted by influential users or other artists can have a similar effect. It's all about getting that exposure, getting people to hear your music.
And I've seen a lot of artists promoting pre-saves lately, like encouraging fans to pre-save a track before it even comes out.
Oh yeah, pre-saves are huge now. It's a way to build hype and also to signal to the streaming platforms that there's interest in your music, which can help with algorithmic placement, potentially getting you on more playlists.
So it's like a marketing tactic almost.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of marketing, we have to talk about social media, specifically those short-form video platforms we talked about earlier. They're not just for fun anymore. They're essential tools for artists.
Like TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. You got to be on those platforms if you want to reach a wider audience.
Absolutely. And it's not just about posting content. It's about actively engaging with your fans, doing Q&As, live streaming, giving people those behind-the-scenes glimpses. It's about building that personal connection.
Yeah, showing your personality, letting people in a little bit.
Right. Because in this digital world where everything is so crowded, it's those personal touches that can make you stand out.
And collaborations are huge too, right? Like remixes can introduce a track to a whole new audience, and featuring on another artist's song or having them feature on yours can really expand your reach.
Oh yeah, collaborations are key. And it's not just other musicians, it's about working with DJs, influencers, content creators, anyone who has a following that aligns with your music.
Yeah, it's about cross-pollination, exposing your music to different communities.
Exactly. And getting featured on relevant blogs, podcasts, doing interviews, that still matters too. It helps build your credibility, your reputation.
It's all about building that brand, right? Like having a unique sound, a visual aesthetic, a message that resonates with people.
Totally. In a saturated market, you have to stand out. And that brand, that identity has to come through in everything you do. Your music, your videos, your social media presence.
It's about creating a world that people want to be a part of.
Exactly. And a lot of artists are offering exclusive perks to their fans, like limited edition merch, NFTs, VIP experiences. It's a way to reward your most loyal supporters and also to create another revenue stream.
Yeah, because the financial side of things can be tricky for artists these days. Like streaming royalties are a big part of the income equation, but they're often not enough to make a living.
Right. The per-stream payout is pretty small, so you need a ton of streams to make decent money. That's why direct fan support is becoming more and more important. Platforms like Patreon, Bandcamp, those allow fans to contribute directly to the artists they love.
And then there's the more traditional methods: merch sales, touring, licensing your music for use in films, TV shows, video games.
Exactly. It's about diversifying your income streams. And the artists who are doing well are often the ones who are the most creative, the most adaptable.
Okay, so to wrap things up, we've seen how streaming has totally revolutionized how we listen to EDM and hip-hop. But social media, visual platforms, they're just as important now. And live experiences, whether in person or online, they're still vital to the culture.
And for artists, it's all about being strategic, understanding how to use these tools to connect with fans, build a following, and make a living. It's a constantly evolving landscape, but that's what makes it so exciting.
And for you, the listener, think about your own habits. Where do you discover new music? What platforms do you use the most? How has your experience with EDM and hip-hop been shaped by this digital world?
Right. And here's a final thought. Given how quickly things change online, how do you think we'll be consuming EDM and hip-hop 5, 10 years from now? What new platforms or technologies will emerge? It's going to be fascinating to see. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a trip. Thanks for listening, everyone.